Hi everyone, welcome to week 3. A couple of observations I'd like to make first is that I'm much happier with the level of engagement that we're seeing on our forums and the discussion board. I think people are finally getting the hang of it. I like the dynamic of where people are going back and forth and bringing up really interesting sort of unique takes and observations, adding and sending information that whether it be links or videos or articles or anything that they've seen, and adding that to the dynamic. That's working out really great. That's what discussion boards are. Looks like people are properly reading a particular posting, right, and noting that before they move forward so they can get credit for it. So I like where the trend is going. We need to see more of that. But all in all, not bad at all. Good transition into hopefully week 3, and that continues to move forward. So this week we're focusing on looking at consumers, communication and segmentation, and how that works. Consumer behavior is at the center of anything in advertising, and understanding how people behave, how consumers behave, what motivates them to look at something, buy, and then ultimately, become loyal customers is sort of central to proper marketing and advertising. So understanding consumers is really an important issue. And every consumer decision-making process goes through these 5 steps. You got to realize that there's a problem. I've run out of something. I need something. I'd like something. Then once you've determined that, you go ahead and do an information search, see what's out there, what's sort of the background of it, if you will. Then you look at the alternatives, and you get some position on how that sort of plays out. And then ultimately you buy something, and then very importantly, you go ahead and you learn if it worked out for you, if it didn't. So you get motivated because there's an issue. Your information search helps influence your perception of things. You establish some attitudes based on those alternative evaluations. You go ahead and do something and integrate that, and then you learn and determine, yep, I like this product, I'll stay with it, or it didn't work for me, try something else, or move on to another alternative. So, what are sources of problem recognition? I ran out of something. I'm not a good golfer, so I ended up needing more golf balls. You know what? I tried this product, it didn't really work, so I'm dissatisfied with it. Something's lacking, if you will. Could be that you've got a new need or want that you didn't know you had. Could be that you've got some products that you're using, and because there's other things that are available to you, you look at related purchases. It could be that somebody teaches you that you need something, or you've got something completely different. All these are reasonable sources of problem recognition. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a concept that's been around for a long time. He was a psychologist, and it actually is fundamental to consumer behavior. So if you look at this pyramid, right, it suggests that in order to sort of be in the zone, which is what self-actualization is, where your home life is great, your professional life is great, your health is good, your family, everything's just kind of on fire, and you hear about these terms where athletes are in the zone and everything just seems to be clicking for them. Well, that's what self-actualization is. But in order to even get there, you need to sort of build the bottom parts of that pyramid. So one can imagine if you're hungry or thirsty, just physiological needs that will trump everything else. I mean, so you could have all these other great things going on, but let's say if you haven't eaten for 3 or 4 days, the only thing you think about is being hungry. Or if you haven't gone ahead and had a drink for a couple 3 days, and we can live a fair bit of time without food, but we can't without water. So these things become all-consuming because they're more powerful elements that drive behavior. Let's say that your belly's full, and then you go on, and let's say you're in a bad neighborhood, for instance. You're walking through, all of a sudden your life can be great, but if there's this dark shadow behind you and it's late at night and you're worried for your safety, that will definitely change how you sort of view things. The need to belong, to be part of something socially. So all these things sort of have to be there in order for anybody to pitch to you. And by the way, if you look at physiological needs, you look at the amount of commercials and advertising that's done for food and drink, safety needs. For instance, are you protected? Do you need a weapon? Do you need training to make sure that you feel self-confident? Social needs. You look at finding a mate. You look at all of the dating services and things that are out there. So all these things are specific needs that, as humans, we have varying levels of what those requirements are, but they're all there, and understanding what those are for marketers is kind of an important process. Information search, very common. You get it through personal sources, friends. You look at Facebook. One of the interesting elements of Facebook moving forward as a competitor to Google on search is that Google does this has this algorithm that looks at all these inquiries and figures out, okay, well, here's, at least for the non-paid ones, the best way to get that information. But just imagine if you have 500 plus friends, and your search is based on that network as opposed to this sort of amorphous algorithm-based network for advice. So that's a very common thing. Word of mouth, talking to your friends, is a big piece of the information search. It could be getting market sources, public information, or your actual experience with a product will determine, if you have any, what your path forward might be. And marketers definitely want to know how we look at information, how we select sources. That's why if you look at social media, it's so interesting, because there's already so much juicy data on people there, and it's much easier for product companies and marketers to see what you do, where before many times they had to sort of test and guess at that. Now they actually have tools that can help them understand that quite readily. So the perception process is the same for everybody. You receive information, you select what you want, you organize that in your head, and then you interpret the data that's there. Two forms of criteria, right? Objective and subjective. These are very different, and it's important to know the difference between the two. Objective ones are pretty self-explanatory. Here's what the price is, here's the terms for the warranty and the service. Subjective ones tend to be different, right? That's an individual perception. It's, oh, I really like the way that looks, the way it feels, what the brand says about you when you carry it and use it. And those are much harder to get your arms around as opposed to objective ones, which are pretty easy for companies to sort of vet, if you will. So if you look at different perspectives, look at it from a marketer perspective, and somebody that's developing, for instance, a lawnmower. Okay, does it have enough power? Is the traction okay? Is it too expensive or pricing? But as a consumer, we look at it very differently. We look at sort of needs and wants, right? It's pretty, will it cut taller grass? How close can I get to shrubs? Will it pull a trail? So those are functional or objective elements. And the psychological ones, if I got a nice big John Deere, and I don't know if that's what this is or not, the green and yellow kind of say that that's what it is, but I don't know that it's that specifically brand. Will it be fun to use later this summer? I mean, I'm actually a landscaping kind of yard guy, so believe it or not, I actually enjoy doing that. And maybe for some people, using a riding lawnmower, there might be that element. So if you buy and spend $3,000 or $4,000 on this big sort of high-end lawn tractor, will that give you more time to do other things like golf, for instance? So there tends to be the psychological elements or the subjective elements, the soft factors that go into a consumer's perspective. Many attitudes, right, that are driven depending on how they kind of look at brands, companies, all these things that companies have to sort of figure out for sure and have an influence on things. So you may have, and most people have opinions and takes on any of this. So you may have a great product that you're interested in, but you may hate the retailer that delivers it, for instance. You may have a brand affinity for one product versus another. So how do consumers learn? That's kind of an important process. So you go from, the thinking model is, you have an evaluation, you got a problem, you're out of something, you need to replace it, they don't make it anymore, what do you do? Conditioning is where you look at, or advertisers look at, doing and going through certain techniques to sort of associate, you use this, this is the benefit you get. You use this, that happens, that sort of thing. And then modeling is based on, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, you see what others, you look at, what other people do, keeping up with the Joneses, some people call it, and they say, hey, I kind of like that, and if I want to be in this neighborhood and be part of the group, you do that. So there's all these different ways that we sort of learn and adapt and adopt different products. So cognitive behavior is a little bit different, or is one element of that. You set a goal, there's a behavior that comes with it, you get some insight, and then you sort of work towards the goals, and the process, the journey is what's kind of important there. You also have external influences on behavior, culture, subculture, social class reference groups. Situational determinants are, depending on what situation you're on, whether you're pressed for time or, you've kind of run out of something that's a critical element, and you may not be as subjective, right, as you, or as particular as you would be if you had time to sort of think about. You look at, let's say your car goes belly up and you have to get a new one because you got to go to work every day. And so if you knew your car was going and you could be a little bit more thoughtful about it, you could kind of look at options. Whereas if you're kind of forced into a decision, you may make a slightly different decision on products you buy because of the fact that you have time pressure, for sure. Reference groups tend to be people whose values that you and perspectives are worth something to you. So whether they be spokespersons, family members, friends, that sort of thing. All kinds of influences on people, for sure. And this actually is a very important slide that every advertiser should really understand, and we'll spend a minute on it. So let's say you are trying to get a message out, you're the source or sender. So that gets encoded in a particular way, so it could be visually, could be audio based, it could be something in terms of sampling or touching, feeling products, whatever that message is. So whether it's a TV, radio ad, it's on the web, it's a billboard, whatever that may be. And then there's a channel, right, that it goes out on. And if it's TV, obviously it could be cable or satellite. If it's a billboard, obviously it's physically got to go out there. And then you're targeting receivers or customers, and then they take that information, they decode it, and see what they sort of get out of your message. And then there's a response and some feedback, and the response may be didn't get it, could be like it, bought it, and then you find out whether that's a positive or everything, and then somehow that feedback gets back. Could be, unfortunately, could be difficult to get it back. Traditionally, and you look at advertising, getting feedback came through focus groups, came through looking at sales data, doing one-on-ones, surveys, that sort of thing. Very inefficient. And what's nice about social media and the web is that there's an ability to track that with much more detail than you ever could be. And the rub here is if you look at noise, just think about noise in communication and in advertising is very different. So noise could be, well, one element of huge noise is your competitors. They're blasting away trying to get to the same receivers that you are, for sure. It could be that just life in general, there's a lot of things going on in people's lives, and things at the moment, whether they're personal oriented or work oriented or whatever the case may be, may take and may be at a high enough level, if you will, in terms of volume, call it that, that impacts the ability of your message to go through the channel and get received. You think about, just daily life, right? Just trying to, get through school or get through a job or get through any personal issues you may be having, may have a lot more of your attention than somebody that's pushing an ad to you. So understanding that and how that works is kind of a very important thing for advertisers. That's a very key slide. You've got to also figure out what your message is, and there's components to that. You've got to structure it, physically design it. You've got to figure out what the content is, and then kind of make sure that message gets delivered to people. Very simply, you look at just visual information. So this particular Coach print ad, I mean, there's the name of the company at the bottom, right? There's nothing else on that page, but that image conveys, a picture speaks 1,000 words. You know that Coach is definitely a luxury brand. It's definitely saying something about you. Just looking at this image and this young lady and what she's wearing, how it's coordinated with her. I mean, the fact that there's a lot that's being communicated in that ad without one word. They're looking at a target demographic. They're saying, if you want to be like her, it's Coach, and here's why. It's fashionable. It's a lot of statements, and that's a good, effective ad that's being communicated by the brand, and very much in line with what the Coach brand is. What kind of channels are available out there? Word of mouth, most powerful still to this day kind of advertising there is. That's why social media is of interest to advertisers. Personal selling, one-on-one, tends to be for higher end products. And then non-personal channels, which are traditional kinds of advertising. There's print media and broadcast media. It tends to be one way. You're not sure who's getting it. Again, that's why people look at social media as a bridge between those two. You got to know who your target audience is, who you're going after. That's extremely important. And you have these different models in advertising that they use to look at the stages of responses. I like IDA as good as any other. So first you go from cognitive to affective to behavioral. So the first thing an advertiser needs to do is get somebody's attention, then get them interested, get them wanting it or desiring it, and then the ultimate action is purchase. Okay? So you can look at all these models. They're essentially going through the same three stages: thinking, feeling, doing. Right? Cognitive, affective, behavioral. Here's an example of a cognitive response, a little more detail. Right? You get exposed to it. There's some thoughts about the product, the message. You got to think about how the ad kind of gets executed. Then there's brand attitudes, or just sort of, that's kind of like 30,000 foot level. Here's what I think, and then there's specific things in terms of what the ad is, and then hopefully somebody buys it. So again, advertising looks at putting in some information. You have some filters. You go through these consumers, and then hopefully you affect consumer behavior over time. So segmentation is important because it's at positioning and looking at specific customers. Extremely important, right? You look at, here's a list of just Procter & Gamble detergents. I mean, why do they have so many? I mean, why don't you just have one detergent? You would think that would be enough. You know what? Different people here there's different targets here. If you look at something like Ivory Snow, for instance, that's targeted at the, you've got non-abrasive, if you will, very soft, and sort of kinds of things because of the sensitivity of baby skin, right? So you want to make sure there's something that's not harsh in terms of a product. So that's a significant market. Their market share is small, but that's still many millions of dollars. It could be that you have somebody that's in a very sort of challenging environment in terms of working outside, very dirty environment, and they may have to have a type of laundry detergent that is just a bit more aggressive, if you will. That helps with stain and stain. That's what ERA is all about. So the reason you have different ones is because people are driven by different needs and wants in cleaning, right? And I mean, you look at Tide, that's almost a third of the market, and that's still true. That's a huge, and its position is tough, powerful cleaning. You would think that would be all detergents, but there are slight differences here, and they do drive different consumer behavior. Product differentiation, it's always important to make your product stick out. Now I find Subway really interesting. I mean, it's really not healthy food, but the positioning is, if you're not going to have healthy food, you might as well get the healthiest non-healthy food, if that seems to make sense, right, Jared? All of that, and that's exactly what they're doing. And whether it's real or perceived, if perception is reality from consumers, if they think it's that, then that's what it is. And this technique of perceptual mapping is a really cool technique. So you can position your product on attributes. Maybe it's price and quality. Maybe it's its use, the kind of person you're going after, what kind of product. I mean, all these things are elements to sort of position your product. And even though this slide here is a bit dated, what you can see here is that you can use this. So you've got on the x-axis conservative to sporty, the y-axis classy and distinctive to practical and affordable. And you can sort of look at this and say, this kind of makes sense. And what was interesting was Cadillac used to be very conservative brand and classy and distinctive. So it was grandmas, grandpas, bankers that would drive it. But over the years, Cadillac has done a great job of shifting its perception to being more sporty and still being a higher end car. You look at all their vehicles, the fact that they name them like they kind of name them with acronyms, right? It used to be the Fleetwood Brom, and now it's the X7 or whatever. Actually, that's a BMW car, but you get the idea, right? Just the whole changing over, the Escalade, all these things, just the naming of them. And you look at their ads, right? They're about performance. They're about, younger demographics, cougars and ballers, if you will, versus, grandmas, grandpas, and bankers. And if you've ever watched MTV Cribs, I don't even know if it's on the air anymore. I mean, every rapper had one of these tricked out Escalades in their garage. I mean, they certainly wouldn't have had a tricked out Fleetwood Brom. So they've done a great job of positioning themselves, and this is a nice technique that you can use for products and markets to kind of see where the customers' perceptions are of their products. The last 3 slides I have here, and I posted some forms related to that. There's some interesting videos that relate to perceptions and segmentation. This one here was actually done on sort of leadership, but I think the elements of it, and I hope you'll agree, are really interesting as to relating to why people buy. If you can communicate the why versus what to customers, it's much more powerful. This video was actually, these 2 clips were taken from a CNBC special on BMW, and there's a comment by one of the PhD engineering guys that does do the sound development for BMW, internal car sounds. That was really interesting, and he made a comment about the differences between dislike, like, and love. So I posted that up. I think you'll find it fascinating. And then this was from a recent talk by a Boston College alum. This guy ran Fortune Brands, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. They had a spirits line, or a hard alcohol line, and he talked about what they ended up doing to look at segmenting their customers, finding out the reasons why they drink. There's apparently many, and try to actually be very specific about it, and then make sure that their brand's aligned with the reasons for their customers drinking. So I think you'll find that really interesting and fascinating, hopefully. So those are 3 forms that I've posted on the web. And actually, let me do this. Where am I here? Let's just quickly take a look at, so this particular, so here's the Simon Sinek video. See if that runs for us or not. Let me reload. See if that does it. Here we go. If no one's actually used or viewed these TED Talks, they're absolutely chock full with great, amazing speakers and content that you can search by right here. Let's see if I can move this forward here. Buffering video. Anyway. Great speaker. I think of that. Here's the BMW driving one. This particular part is really interesting. This is the part 2 video. Let's see if this will roll here. There you go. Anyway, I think you'll get a lot out of this. And then this one here, when you load that URL to that Boston College speaker, you'll see this. You just click on Launch Echo Player, and then it's a video stream from a video server that will run that. And I think I mentioned that I asked you to focus on a couple of specific elements. Time, I think 22 minutes, or I forget exactly where I said. So you can just, because it's a video stream, you can just move to that particular part, and it's very effective. Unfortunately, this is a fixed video camera, so you don't really, and I don't know if you can see this because sometimes when you're doing screen capture like this, sometimes the images don't go through. But at any rate, sadly, Bruce kind of goes off to the right. It's a fixed video camera, so you don't really get to see him. But you do get to see the slides, and you do get to hear him very clearly. So I think you'll find that very interesting. So that's it for this week. I will be on campus again next Tuesday, and we are going to be starting our term projects, which require group participation in teams, so it might be a nice chance to meet your group members there. It'll be probably 6:30 to 7:30 like last week. Sometime around there is when we'll have it, but I'll give you an update when that happens. So thanks again. Feel free to reach out to me if you need anything. Thank you.